Hey, everybody. I don't know if anybody's going to show up because it's an odd time of day. Um, I've been hitting up some other channels um, to talk about different things and what have you. And one of the biggest questions, hey, Miss Elegant, how are you today? And some beginner gardeners, I guess if you want to call them that, are asking about the importance of compost. Well, uh, yeah, I have sat um, for 3 days since I had that discussion with them, or maybe two. Just seems like three because I'm kind of here or there. Yeah, out of coffee, so I'm drinking honey water. Um, Not working and what have you, but that's neither here nor there. Compost, the importance of compost. Huh. Oh my God. And Elegant, I know you're going to sit there and you're going to look at this and go, yeah, answer this one for beginners. Hey, Lena, I haven't seen you in a while. Because I don't come on this time of day. This is an unusual one for me. Um, my energy levels are just really way low, and I'm not bouncing back like I normally do. Um, but where I was headed, um, now this is beginner's understanding of compost because um, one of the people that was talking to me about it um, was she's an apartment dweller, and I'm assuming on the second floor or something. And another lady uh, that visits my channel, she can't even garden outside. They're so strict. Um, Bucket, what have you, she can't. But um, since my book is written and designed more so towards the new homeowner, I'm trying to. There's so many ways to compost. There's so much to understand with composting. Newspapers and cardboard boxes being so out of whack and throwing things off, and that you can. I don't. You can, but it throws your nitrogens and your carbon levels off, and it just kind of it. But understand, hey, what's going on, Buzz? Um, it's just you got to understand the way the system is starting to stack up. They're taking a lot of this stuff away because they want to force you to eat the bad foods. They want to force you to be sick. That's my impression of it. That's just the way it's going. Because if you get caught composting in some cities, you get fined for it because they're going to say it's the smell and because it calls in rodents. The reality is, it is so good for you, um, and so good for your gardens, and so good at replenishing your microorganisms. That's key here. See, a lot of people don't understand. You're building a you're building a bed to attract microorganisms. The microorganisms are what I constantly am trying to preach about, which is the food web. Now let's approach this from another side. They They want you to throw all of these good things away because they get a kickback from the trash company. Look at your trash bins. A lot of cities are giving you brand new trash cans so that the new arms can grab them and the guy doesn't have to get out and do labor. There's a barcode on it for a reason. They're going to be billing you for all of that. They're going to bill you for every pound of trash you throw out. So if you've got barcoded trash cans, you need to be thinking about composting. Now, granted, your newspapers and your cardboards and even some cases your leaves. Hey, Marie, um, these are hard composting things because they compact together so well. They don't allow air, and you need 50% air when you compost. Now, Lincoln can back me up on this. When you've got too much moisture in a compost pile, it doesn't work. It will degrade and break down, but it doesn't compost. We're going after something different here because we want the microorganism life. So we want like a 50-50 ratio in a sense because you want like a squeezed out damp sponge. That's what you want in moisture content throughout your compost pile. So sometimes you need to add more, sometimes you need to take a little less away. But the more weird stuff you put in there, the leaves, the grass clippings, the sticks, the twigs, the food scraps, you know, what are some of these cities reporting now? Something I was reading the other day. Averages are your food waste compostable materials are running about 13 to 20% of all trash. Now, when you start going city after city, you start adding that up, you're talking 20 tons of compostable material that could be going back in people's yards. You've already spent the money. Why throw that away? If you're one of these people that goes out and buys soil and buys additives for your yard and for your gardens, you're throwing a very valuable substance away. 13% of your overall trash is compostable materials, organic waste. Think about that. How much money could you be saving? Now, you're going to look at that, let's just say in your yards, and you don't garden. You don't understand the importance of it. But hey, JCT, and I'm going to get to some of you because I haven't wrenched a few of you that I know, and but I'll get there. But I'm kind of on a roll for Compost 101 is to understand what is compost. Why is it important? Even if you don't have a garden, because you don't understand how simple gardening is, if you've got dogs that are doing stuff in your yard, hey, old bear brother, you got brown spots. You can take some of that compost material, put that on them brown spots, and amp that up. Get the carbon and the nitrogen back over into that spot, amp that up, and get that grass back. And yes, those manures from your dogs and your cats are compostable. Now, there's some differences. There's, kitty litter and what have you. Yeah, that's not 101 of compost. But so let's look at the savings. 13% less trash going into those trash bins that have barcodes on them that they're going to come after you for. Now, whether that's air, water, moisture, that all adds up. They're going to bill you for every pound on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. That's what these trash cans are designed for. I know the original company that designed this system. That's what it's designed for. Hey, Picker Rick, they're going to bill you for every pound of trash. You need to be thinking about compost in that same way. So if you're just taking care of a yard or you're a beginning gardener, think about the food scraps. Think about the food waste. Now, at Picker Rick's house, there isn't very many food scraps between him and the dog. The donuts disappear. But that's besides the point. You understand where I'm going. These things are These things are really important. You don't, hey, there's the warrior queen. I knew you'd show up to one of them. I knew you'd catch me eventually. But these scraps, I mean, when you're going to start coming, I don't know what they're talking about billing ratio wise yet. Okay. But let's just go with $1 a pound. God forbid you're throwing that much stuff away. But let's just go with $1 a pound. Let's pull off all the moisture. Let's pull off all the good stuff. And let's just say you've got about 5 pounds of scrap, food, waste, stuff that can be going into compost. Every single week they pick up your trash at $1 a pound. You can save that much in just your yard carbon nitrogen fillers. Just like I preach, go organic, get away from the chemicals. At $1 a pound, do you really want to be throwing away the carbon and the nitrogen and the living organic matter that you can potentially be putting in your yard or putting in your flower bed or putting in your garden, which is where there's another side to this at the same time. And you've heard me, a lot of you have heard me talk about the water runoff conditions that we're currently dealing with because we have no organic matter in our yards. The water retention that the organic life coming out of a compost pile is capable of in your garden can save you from tomato end rot, can save you from losing plants and from flooding, can save your entire yard. And get that organic matter and get that organic life back in populace into your soil and start bringing it back. You got to understand, there are millions of microbes that we're talking about in this food web. They attract worms that are the natural rototillers. If you were to go out and measure what was the ratio I heard this morning, in a foot by foot by foot square, you should have about 4 to 8 worms found in a shovel full of dirt. On a, one by one, roughly your shovel's a foot wide, roughly. Hey, sweet girl, you got to understand, if you don't have organic life, you don't have any worms. You're going to have flooding problems, potential damage to your house, potential damage to your foundation. You got to have worms. They're not going to be there if you don't have organic matter. Another plus for composting. Now, some of you were asking, or some of the people that I was talking to were asking, well, what about bucket composting? You can. You've got to watch your moisture content as things break down. You can, but you've got to let water out. You've got to have a 50% ratio. You also have to watch your temperatures. And Elegant is here. Rick is here. They'll tell you, when you start getting organic materials in a compost pile up over 150 degrees, weird things happen in that compost pile that are toxic, that become dangerous. You got to be careful. You get them too hot. So when you're bucket composting and those materials start breaking down, those microbes start going to work, these things heat up. It's the same as why they tell you to avoid chicken manure. It's too hot. It's got way too much nitrogen. You can use it, but you need to let it air out. You need to let it die out. You need to wait a year. These are all super important things that go to different levels of composting, different, let's call that compost class 101, 102, 103, because it can go really bad, really fast over 150 degrees. You're going to get this white ash look stuff throughout your compost pile. That's a completely different toxic microbe. You can't use that compost anywhere when it does that. That would be the compost that I would say you throw that out on the garden as your last ditch effort in the winter. throw it down and forget about it. And hopefully all of that toxic stuff dies because it's exposed to the ice and the snow. So you got to be careful over 150 degrees. So bucket composting you can do, but you got to be aware of your temperatures. You kind of and yeah, you can do this in the dark. You can do this kind of, off in the corner in the shadows or what have you. That's fine. If you're full scale, again, that's class 102. Totally different type of composting. Because my God, there's you have large scale compost where they're pumping moisture through, they're pumping air into these gigantic piles of compost, huge mountain compost piles to turn out topsoil. That's what these companies do, and they're forcing all of these conditions to happen. They're forcing hot water into these piles to amp this stuff up to get it going faster because and they're not worried about getting it over temperature. They're working on it so much, so fast, so hard. But again, that's an advanced composting. Then you get down into your chicken wire coop house or your boxes or your bins or and it goes, we come down to different classes and different grades and different piles of compost. Some of these piles you actually want in the sunlight. You can do a compost pile in 8 to 16 days and have some incredible materials coming off of it. You got to work it a little bit and you got to watch its temperature a little bit and you're going to work. It's a labor intensive thing depending on how much you're pushing. And then all of that changes when you go in and you add your manures. So you see, there's a whole science, huge science, that goes into building compost bins. Is it a good idea? Absolutely, because it's going to save you from your city billing you for that amount of trash going out. And why would you throw out when you can make your own soils, top soils, in your organic area? Because your organic area is different than your neighbor 3 blocks away. Weather conditions, water conditions, this, that, the other, the leaves, the grass, all of these things make a difference in your compost. You want compost as close to your conditions as possible. Why would you go out and buy topsoil mix to add to your bed when you're throwing perfectly good compostable materials away and paying $1 a pound? That's the analogy. So composting, yes, absolutely incredible. Great way to treat your yard. Great way to treat burnout spots from dogs. Great way. Now, if you're really considering composting and you're really, the first thing a lot of cities are going to say is, we don't want you doing this because of pest control. If you're attentive to your pile, if you're working your pile, you're not going to have those kind of issues because rats and mice are not going to come in there and start building homes when you're breaking a third of it away once a day, checking your temperatures and checking your moisture content. So that's not an issue. When you just ignore a compost pile, okay, now you got a different kind of problem. Right, right. Ash, right. Absolutely. Add it. Again, think about your trash. Again, I wrote the book, The Green Wizard's Guide. If you don't have it, get it. If you know somebody buying a house that's going to have property, give them this book as a gift, whatever it takes, because this information is really important. We've got to go back to organic. We've got to restore our yards. We've got to stop the flooding. But I come on to talk compost. Um, yeah, ashes are great in the garden. They're great in compost piles. They slow it down a little bit. They make you see things a little bit differently. But understand, everything that you're going to feed the microbial life in that compost pile, whether it be ashes, leaves, wood, grass, oranges, grapefruit, eggshells, the honeydew list, whatever that you're throwing away can feed your garden. You don't have to go buy topsoil when you're going to build this organic matter builder. It takes the organic life to break down all of these things into organic nitrogen, carbon, mineral rich materials, break them back down into their original forms to make them bioavailable for your yard, for your digestive system, for your oxygen, for your this, for your that. You know, a lot of people are coming at me going, okay, I have this particular problem in my leaves, particular problem with my, are you feeding it compost? Are you feeding it worm activity? Do you have worm activity around your trees and your bushes that are now having a problem? They have no clue. They have no idea. First thing they tell me is, I mulched it. I used that red stuff. It was great. At which point I just kind of walk away in the conversation because those chemical dyes in the mulch are what caused the problem inevitably. They killed off the food web, which was breaking things down, bringing it back to the tree, making it bioavailable to the tree. I'm not saying compost your tree. I'm saying put the end results around your tree. These things do matter. All right. Pine needles. This is a green material. It is a high nitrogen material. But as it's breaking down and turning brown, it's actually off gassing something toxic that you don't want in a compost pile. If the pine needles are brown, okay. Pine sap, again, another bad thing. Now, there's materials you can get out of that pine sap on the prepper side that are highly combustible. So don't necessarily throw your pine out, but you want it to really, really, really dry. You almost take your pine trees and stand them up on end. Let all that sap run down to the bottom of it, because that's, what do they call that wood, guys? One of you is going to remember what it is, but it's pine sap. It is extremely flammable. You don't want that in your compost pile. You can inevitably, and over time, it is a compostable material. My honest opinion, bury that sucker after the needles have changed color. It's right. Well, it's a rosin, but they call it something else. It doesn't matter because we're just talking compost. But no, I would not take pine needles green, or any pine for that matter, in green form and stuff that in a compost. Brown needles, sure, why not? It's already dried out and decayed, and it's already in its breakdown phase, and you're not off gassing from the green materials. You kind of want to avoid green material, kind of want to avoid green materials in your compost pile, kind of. You can do it in stages. It depends. Again, what size compost you're talking about. For me to tell somebody that's bucket composting to go ahead and add your grass clippings and add, no, 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 no. You will slow it down in such a way and off gas it in such a, and it won't work because of that off gassing that's coming out of there. Don't do that. I'm going to catch up with chat. Oh, just give me a second. I would just bury a pine tree. I would go anywhere near the garden, dig a hole and bury the pine tree and let that thing break down over time and let Mother Nature treat the pine tree the way it needs to be treated to get where you want to go. because as it breaks down, it's going to hold moisture, it's going to hold microbial life, it's going to do this, it's got benefits. So just throw a pine tree away, I wouldn't do it. Um, Needles, again, brown needles, great. Mother Nature breaks them down in the woods. Again, we're mimicking nature. We want organic. Go back to thank you for that, JCT. That was burned trash. Got that. What do you think of pine needles? Just answered that. I have a problem with gas. Oh, yeah. So you're off gassing compost in a sense that's been buried throughout your yard as they move those pigs around. Um, if you can compost and spread that over top of your yard, even in those gassing areas, uh, the microbes will inevitably get in there, amp that up, and speed that process up and stop the problem. Um, uh, no. Now, see, I was going to go into that. Um, Warrior Queen, I would not throw them out. Okay. If you have a big enough property, your grandkids around, pine needles can be fun in an open fire because they snap, crackle, and pop really interestingly. Um, and you burn off a lot of these toxic materials we can't and don't want in our gardens and in our flower beds. But the ashes, there's a mineral base in there that you may want. So again, you have to think about this on the level of what your city is going to be billing you to take stuff away. The less they take away, the less you have to pay. That's how they're going to choke us all out in a lot of this stuff. So anybody getting into a new house, anybody getting into this kind of stuff, the less you scrap, the better off you are. Compost, find another use. It's about getting off grid inevitably and having the fewest amount of bills. So why would you throw out the good organic matter when some of it just needs time? You can burn up pine trees out. Don't eat over it. Don't misunderstand. But just a bonfire, you can burn pine and utilize those ashes. A lot of people immediately start preaching, well, if you got a fireplace and if you're going to be cooking food, I'm not saying that. Something that you can just have a bonfire and everybody sit around and be goofing off. Pine is fine for that outdoors. Again, the silts and the this and the that. Okay, yeah, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about something you can compost. Don't throw stuff away that they can bill you for later. Find another use for it. I don't care if it's just old scrap table that got broke in the last bar fight in the house. Burn that stuff up. Utilize its ashes. There's minerals throughout some of those woods and those wood remains that are very important in the garden. So you're not going to want to lose those things. All right, got that one. Got that one. Did I? If I have not got everybody, because I know everybody here. But yeah, compost absolutely important. Compost your table scraps. Compost your everything. I don't care. Bones, don't care. Throw them in. Everything that was once living can be broken down. Granted, they take a little bit more time. Granted, you don't want, and again, going back into some of these other animals, don't have your dogs messing around in your compost pile if you're throwing bones in it. especially chicken bones. Now, on the reverse of that, there are some animals out there that can digest those, and some nuisance animals that can't, that will. And it's going to cause them problems and get rid of those animals. So you can actually load your compost pile with certain types of bones that will kill off the rodents that would be attacking those. So it's a catch 22. If you can keep your dogs out, keep your animals safe. Those big barrels that turn don't have enough holes in them, I understand. They're moisture content. And again, this is going back just basic 101. Compost 101. 50% moisture, 50% oxygen. These are the two things that we're looking for with all of our materials in there. We don't want materials of the same size. So if you have to throw cardboard away, or if you have to throw newspaper away because you're not burning stuff off and turning it into ashes, shred the living daylights out of it. Make it different sizes. Crumple it up so that it will add air and help add air to your compost pile. As far as your mix is concerned, I'll come out with a list of, and I probably need to talk to Elegant and talk to Rick a little bit because I'm sure they're going to have a little bit better input on some of these things. But your brown materials versus your green materials, your carbons versus your nitrogens, and you kind of look at the different things, uh, and look at. There's so much involved. There is an actual science involved here. But compost 101, absolutely, you'll want to compost. Because they're going to come at you with the trash cans and start billing you. Why? When you're going to grow a garden and you're going to be thinking, well, I need to add topsoil. No, not when you can grow your own. Now, going over to the other side, you're asking, do I compost to a point right directly in my beds? So where I have test beds, or I have building beds, or I have this, or I have that, I'm throwing I'm throwing them scraps down in there. I'm burying that stuff in there. You want to have organic matter in your yard, in your garden. Always have a reason for the worms to be invading and attacking. Just like when you harvest, you get everything down that you possibly can, clip off your tomatoes from the roots, clip off your corn stalks, leave the roots. You want organic matter always in the soil. You never want to remove that, because that's what keeps the worms coming. That's what's going to take care of your yard and take care of your garden. And geez, when they hit a good compost pile, again, this is where you go opposites. Bucket versus open compost. Open compost attracts a whole lot more worms, and it goes absolutely crazy. It also happens a whole lot faster because it remineralizes faster, because the worms are going in. It's going in one end and coming out the other as they go through and make their trails. You can't necessarily do that in big bin or rotary can or just a basic bucket, unless you have holes in it and introduce worms some way, shape, form, or another. There's a plus to it. You throw that directly in a garden and it has not been worm invaded yet. Oh, wow, does your soil explode. Whereas if you take compost that's already been worm invaded and throw that out there, yes, it's still viable and good for your garden, but there's issues. Okay, so it's catch 22. Hey, buddy, what's going on? So, yeah, there's different ways of composting, different ways of, and I'll go into all of those. Some people will actually take and this goes outside on the other direction, they will actually take and build a compost pile and then bring in the dirt on top of it and start gardening immediately. Some will actually bury the compost and go that way. There's, again, it goes into so much science and so off the deep end, and there's so much involved in so many different things you can do. Yes, you can accelerate a compost pile by adding a hint of ammonia to the water you're spraying with. It calls in more worms. It attracts more of this, that, or the other. The more active material you have in there. Now, you're going to get some of these naysayers that say, don't throw anything acidic in there. It'll all inevitably break down. It takes time, it slows it down. But as you're attacking the bin, turning the bins over, doing this, doing that, doing the other, these acidic matters are going to go away. Worms will avoid them. This is that, and the other. It will compost over time. It slows it down. I wouldn't directly go out there and throw a lemon in there and expect it to be the hot spot in the bed. It won't. Uh, Vermicomposting is a very particular thing, and that's a completely different way of composting. But that's what people are asking. They want compost 101. I think I covered it. If I've left anything off, jump on me and say something. Elegant, Rick. I know there's a few of you gardeners here. Um, um, Beer guys that do their own brewing at home, and what they're doing with the hops and what they're doing to fire up the nitrogen levels and get their wow, just wow. And vermicomposting, oh wow. I mean, you want to expand your worm beds? Yeah, brew some beer and throw the old hops in there. Watch what happens. A bunch of drunk worms will have a lot more baby worms really, really fast. It's the only nice way I'm going to say it, because that's just what happens. It's incredible. Yeah, you got it. It goes into a scientific level, and you got to watch a couple of things. Um, but inevitably, 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 if I'm going to just sit here and I'm going to say, look, there's one specific way, it depends on your region, depends on what you're allowed to do and what you can get away with. There's, if you're gonna bucket compost to control your pests, okay, that's the way of looking at it. You're taking your table scraps out and you're adding them to a bigger 5 gallon bucket, whatever. That's fine as long as you've got rotation in there. Leave holes in the bottom of those buckets. And when you go out there, you pop the lid off and you check your moisture content. And again, it barely damp, like a wrung out sponge, barely damp. If you've got holes in the bottom of those things and you can let the moisture naturally come out, you're going to get worms in there and vermicompost. That's extremely helpful. That's extremely beneficial. You can do it without the worms, but I recommend you do use worms, because boy, oh boy, vermicompost, it's a day and night difference from standard compost. Day and night difference. Huge. Hey, Bobby, you still awake? Oh, you can. You can. And then we get into compost teas and its runoff and its availabilities and what those nitrogens and carbons in the compost tea, which is basically the water that comes out of the compost. One way of looking at it, because as your moisture levels drop or you add moisture or as things degrade and break down, and of course the worms are going to expel moisture content too, as that stuff bleeds out of the buckets. Wow. One of the tricks, I don't know the name, What they've begun doing is they've started building small compost bins loaded with worms directly in the garden. You know that sounds odd, but they take a bucket with a lid on it for pest control. They'll bury that bucket 75%. So they're obviously using the big 5-gallon buckets or bigger. They're filling it with holes to allow runoff and allow worms in and out. And they're going in and they're putting in their table scraps and their composts and their what have you. And they're careful about what they're adding. Don't misunderstand. No, there's the star of the show barking. Um, and it is amping up gardens without actually disturbing the garden because that stuff bleeds off. That all of that material bleeds off. And then when you go in and you go to put in next year's harvest, you take the lid off that thing, it's full, it's loaded, and you take handfuls out and you put it in underneath your already started plants. So you're throwing compost and composted materials directly under the plants as you're putting them in. And it just sat in the garden, staying the same temperature, giving the worms a place to go, and does all the composting directly in the garden. So your bleed off, your compost teas and what have you are coming out. Your organic material can come and go, allowing the worms to follow, come and go. Your root bases, depending on the size of your holes, the roots will actually come in and invade those bins directly in your garden. So you see, there's a whole lot more to compost than I just built a pile with a bunch of boxes in my backyard and it's hot and I'm turning it and I'm keeping it. There's so much more. Oh boy. There's so many different ways of composting, of great ideas being utilized. I saw one guy that's using cardboard bins. He's taking cardboard tubes because of whatever company he works at, he gets these things. He's sawing these things in half. Now that not thick, okay, don't. And he's loading them up with the dead plants from the harvest the year before. And he's sticking them down in his garden. It's about a foot long. And he's going down his aisles and he's burying these things. And they're thin cardboard with all this waste material throughout. And the worms are coming in and attacking. And they're getting through that cardboard and they're getting into that organic material. The microbial life is going active inside those tubes. It allows water to run through. It holds moisture because it's cardboard. It's got all sorts of benefits. Yeah, it's got potential negatives. If there's ink, if there's this, if there's that, if it's treated. If again, you have to think about what is organic waste, what is organic material, what do you want from your garden, and what are you willing to throw away and pay to get taken away. That's the importance of organic material. That's the importance of getting back to composting, getting back to feeding the yard, feeding the garden, and feeding yourself with everything you've already grown. Why would you throw stuff away? Let's just take, and I can't go to anything else. I'll just go right into my tomato plants. Why would you take the tomato stalk, roll that thing up, and I get big ones. My last measurement, I had an 18-foot stalk, 18-foot long vine. Why would you take all of that, roll that thing up, and throw that thing in the trash can to be hauled away? Think of everything that was pulled out of your yard to make that plant grow and to be 16 feet long, 18 feet long, 20 feet long, whatever. Why would you throw all of that organic waste away when you can compost it? When you can bury it back in your bed and let it break down over the winter? We're throwing more away that we can utilize and get healthier yards, healthier plants, healthier gardens, and inevitably a healthier you. Now, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this in the 45 minutes. Not many do. I'm lucky if I get people to listen for 3 minutes on most of my videos that I post. At least that's what the analytics tell me. Monday night, I know a lot of you guys missed or caught the replay because I posted the replay. I am not going to be reposting it here. Monday night, we are talking about your health, vitamins, minerals, your health over on that prepping channel. He's not here, so I'm not gonna talk about exactly who he is, but the link is on the other video. I've been asked to come back up on panel because of my knowledge in homeopathic medicine and or eating the right foods, getting the right vitamins and minerals to put you on weight loss, to get you healthier, to fix your joints, to fix your this, to fix your that, to fix your other. So there's a show coming up on Monday night, and I will not be reposting it here. This is the book channel. I'm sorry. This is about the book, and this is about me trying to sell enough books that I can buy coffee and actually have coffee at home again. Not asking, just making it funny. So those of you that are concerned about your health, concerned about eating right, even on the prepping level, yeah, you're going to need so many calories per day to survive in a grid down situation. So you're going to need to be aware of what your calorie needs versus what your intake needs. Grid down situation in the middle of winter, you're screwed. You're never going to get the vitamins and minerals that you need. So what are you going to do? No prepper is talking about it. No prepper is thinking about it. They're not thinking about where am I going to get all the nutrients I need in the middle of winter if I'm bugged out and I'm hiding out. Am I going to be able to hunt enough, find enough, get enough berries, this, that, the other? It's in the other video, Warrior Queen. And it was the video I just did, the one I released on Monday. So just pop back to my channel. It's the first one that comes up. I'm one of those. I love having all the channels here. You guys are great creators and what have you. You guys keep me up, keep my mind on things. But I don't. It's just my pet peeve. I don't talk about channels that aren't here in the chat. It's just not, to me, it's not good business. If they want to come over and hang out, awesome, great. I'll talk about them. If they don't, then, well, sorry. But it's a prepping channel. That's how I'll lead it, Warrior Queen. It's a prepping channel. And I just copied over and redid the broadcast of the 1 hour show. But we're going into the health and nutrition. The NPK system, and I will end with this. The NPK system, the chemical guys, oh my God, you've got to have, and now it turns out there's 5. You got your herbicides, your pesticides, your nitrogens, your phosphorus, your phosphates, da 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 da. There's 5 of them now that they're spraying your yards and your gardens down with, whether you know it or not. They're telling you, the scientists are telling you, well, you only need 12 particular minerals to make plants grow as healthy as they can possibly grow. Blah, 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 blah. Well, that's not right either. You actually need 90 minerals in your diet on a daily basis to be healthy, to not be sick, for your body to regenerate itself. We know that throws a lot of people in a tailspin. Yes, your body can regenerate itself. There's things you have to avoid, okay, like Excessive amounts of moonshine, or I'm sorry, carb cleaner. Um, Not good for the diet. It's a great supplement sometimes, but living on a beer can, that's not healthy. Uh, just where are you going to get those things on a viable basis? Okay, really. If your garden's not getting everything it actually needs, and your yard's not getting everything it actually needs, where are you going to get it from? Are you going to get it out of your garden when you're only following the NPK system and just utilizing the 12 that they talk about and chemically enhancing and treating your plants? Now, I don't know about you. Now, that's not to say that all pesticides are bad and all herbicides are bad. Don't misunderstand. But I don't want to go out into my garden and get an unhealthy tomato and try and eat that thing and take in the pesticides and herbicides and douse my system with them because they're chemically set up to saturate the plants. So, do you really want to be eating that stuff? That's the NPK system. The organic system allows the food web to go out and get the minerals for each individual plant and its requirements. Think about it this way. This is where I'll stop because I'm at 51 minutes. This is where I'll stop. Think about it this way. When you pull a carrot out of the ground, does it taste like your tomato? No, it doesn't, because there's different minerals that go into making a carrot than there are that make a tomato. Or let's just talk about all the different degrees of hot peppers, because we got some pepperheads here. From green to banana to habanero. The difference in the capsaicin levels is caused by the difference in minerals that it absorbs and is capable of absorbing. You want some hot peppers? I'll never grow them again myself. But you know those mild banana peppers that you get at the grocery store? Mine were so toxic they burnt my skin because everything is available in my garden. And yellow peppers are actually supposed to be that hot. These things were fresh. I didn't even eat them. I brushed my hand against a plant, reaching in to grab something else, and burnt my hand. Never again. I will never grow peppers again. No, no way, no how, not going to happen because my soil's too mineral rich. Never going to happen again. I even question whether green bell peppers would be safe in my garden. That's what you're capable of doing when you've got the minerals correct. Keep in mind, we were just tested. The scientific report states explicitly the United States, the main grower in the world for everywhere else in the world, is 85% deficient in all of its soil needs. Composting is that important. Don't throw these materials away. So, your health, let's even call it your wealth, because the healthier you are, the wealthier you can become. And the less you have to spend on groceries, the less you have to spend on trash being pulled away, the more you have in your pocket. So instead of following the expensive NPK system, let's go a different route. If you know somebody buying a house, if you know somebody that's trying to get into this, if you know somebody that is thinking about gardening, have them get my book. Learn from my mistakes. Because it's not stuff that I screwed up. I believed the NPK system for a while. And then I killed my pumpkins. And that's all in the book. So save yourself a fortune. read my book. It only takes about 2 hours. If you've got somebody that needs it, send them my way. They'll appreciate it. Next time around, I think we'll do Compost 102 and talk about the differences in different types of composting and ways you can speed it up or slow it down or do what you want to do. Yeah, we won't talk about the pumpkins. Only thing I'll say about pumpkins, milk. Milk will do a body good. It'll also do a pumpkin vine good. That's where I'll leave it. Thanks, everybody, for coming in. I see you hanging in there, Grizz. I don't know who else is still here. I don't know if I missed anybody, but I'm going to shut up and I'm going to start thinking about composting 102 and whether we should even do it. Let me know. Leave some comments below. We'll see if I should take this further and maybe go into a little scientific method of it, but that's where we're at. I'll catch you all later. Thank you all for showing up at this oddball time. You know where to find me, everybody. Grizz, you finally caught one of my streams. I can't believe it. You have a great day, everybody. We'll see y'all later.